both you and I have these sort of libertarianish tendencies when it comes to allowing people to live sort of how they want, so long as it doesn't bother me. There's sort of two areas where I think this philosophy tends to come into conflict with the real world. One is we've broadened the definition of harm pretty dramatically. So there was the John Stuart Mill harm principle that I get to wave my fist around until it hits you in the face, at which point I've harmed you. And now we've broadened out harm to include things like emotional harm or indirect harm. And this leads to more claims of me against you. Right now, I get to make claims on you because maybe you're threatening my emotional state. Maybe you're refusing to accept my authenticity. Maybe my belief is that economics, for whatever reason, is, I think falsely, but you believe it's a zero-sum game. And so if I'm making money, it's because I'm somehow taking money away from you. So there's the broadening of harm as a definitional principle. And then there's also the problem that you were alluding to earlier, which is that you have a couple of kids, I have 3 kids. And as you say, children are little barbarians, right? Children are innocent, and they are wonderful, and they are cute, and they are horrible little people, right? All they do all day long is do extraordinarily selfish things, punctuated by some of the cutest stuff that you've ever seen in your life. Like if you met a 40-year-old who acted like a 4-year-old, they would be on death row, right? If 4-year-olds had the capacity to actively wield weapons, they'd be like Thanos. Half the world's population would be gone, right? And I speak as the father of a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 1-year-old. I mean, again, they're wonderful. I love them. But the purpose of civilization, the purpose of parenting is, in fact, to provide guidance. And so it's easy to be sort of, culturally libertarianish and allow for a lot of subjectivity in how people live their lives. But when you raise your own child, obviously, you want to set boundaries for that. And also, we have to, I think, define what harm means pretty narrowly in order to allow for people to live their own lives. And where I see us going societally is in almost precisely the opposite direction. We're defining harm extremely broadly to the point where mere offense is now considered harm, dictating that I'm going to go get the government or I'm going to use societal pressure in order to actively destroy you, your career, your family. And at the same time, dictating to people that actively parenting your kids, societal institutions, societal values, civilizational values that I use to guide my children are in fact a form of bad indoctrination, that only we should be able to educate your kids in the way that we see fit. So how do you kind of square the circle in terms of allowing people to live their own lives? For me, it's define harm very narrowly and allow a pretty broad parental remit when it comes to how you bring up your children, so long as, again, you are not indoctrinating them in true violent harm or in situations in which they are likely to be harming themselves. Because presumably adults should know more than kids, and you should already know the rules of the road, right? I mean, I'm sure that you're teaching your daughters not to do a lot of the things that you did when you were young. That's what it means being an adult, right? It's the difference between being an adolescent and being an adult.
I completely agree with the obligations of a parent. I feel perhaps some of these, to parrot a point you made earlier, that sometimes these ideas that work within the institution of the family are mapped onto a culture and a society, and what better analogy could there be for the notion of patriarchy other than those in power are kind of like a benevolent, disciplining but ultimately loving father, an idea that is clearly vocally being challenged and rejected. I know that there are certainly loads of things, Ben, that you could say to me that would really hurt me. And I would feel that we have a kind of contract, and perhaps there are things that I could say that would hurt you, although you seem kind of like a robust guy, I've got to say, and you'd have to be to do what you do, and I respect you for that. But I would, if I thought I'd said something that hurt you, I would not like it. I would not like it, and I apply that to anybody. If I don't want people to be in pain, I don't want people to suffer, and who am I to impose a definition of harm upon them? Again, I return to this point of a centralized idea of what America or a nation or even a set of ideals are. How can we all be expected to harbor one another's diverse sets of ideals? Why should we live in this frontier of ongoing conflict when we could just accept that, accept what seems to us personally unacceptable, except for where it's bloody obvious that you don't kill, harm, impose, take away people's rights to consent, all of these kind of obvious ethics and values. There is so much emergent conflict, and sometimes I think it's a confection. Sometimes I think these culture wars are, what do I want to say, inflated, promoted, escalated to prevent us from talking about what you and I are blessedly discussing today, underlying values. influence. So with harm, I recognize there are some things, I'm a comedian. So when I'm in that space in my head, and I'm not there particularly today, except for when you do the ad reads, then I see real opportunity for humor, Ben, real opportunity. And I want to get in there with you, but I'm in a sort of an open space where I feel that what I want to do is understand you and be giving to you and generous to you, even though, as we have both listed and are both surely aware, there are loads of stuff that we would disagree on, and that we would be able to fill an hour on every single one of those subjects if we so chose to. But when I hear you talk about your children or your religion or your wife, I feel like, oh yeah, you're just basically the same as me in limitless space. You're gonna die like I'm gonna die. Why are we gonna quarrel about the stuff we don't agree on? So for me, this idea of harm, I can see how some people come from communities either historically as a result of their cultural, ethnic or racial identity are traumatized. For me, that seems like a very, very real thing. I've spent some time studying it, perhaps not as much as you, but the idea of inherited pain and trauma, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, and obviously economically, seems like a very real thing. In forms of individual identitarian matters, I feel that the subjective experience for all of us is by its nature a mystery. And in areas of complexity and confusion, my personal choice would be to, when the Lord allows it, to err on the side of, okay, I don't want to harm anybody. I feel like if I live the rest of my life without harming another person, without another person walking away from an interaction with me feeling that they feel cheapened or not heard or not who they are, then I feel like I have a connection to God. So I got everything I need. I'm not looking for it out there no more. And I don't want to be pulled back out there. I want us in this time of division and fragmentation and fracture to find ways of coming together in peace, coming together with peace. That's why I'm chatting to Candace Owens and chatting to you. I don't want to sit around chatting to people I agree with. I want to talk to people where there are areas of concern and discontent and downright disagreement, and find ways that we can harmonize and live together. Because I'm not coming to live in your house with you. I'm not going to start going, hey, why don't you do this with your kids? And presumably you're not going to do the same with me. So it's hypothetical. It's hypothetical. And for the people that these subjects are real, the people that feel challenged about the way they are, the way that they identify, often I must admit, I cannot comprehend it or understand it, but as best I can, that's part of what they are saying. They are saying, you don't understand. Okay, that's okay. I want people to be happy. I don't want to hurt anyone. So when I find myself in these areas of complexity, I think, where in me can I find love? Where in me can I find love? And where is the real power here, Ben? This is what I return to. And I know this sort of seems like an evolved sort of postmodern sort of Marxist idea, but I feel that the obligation lies with where the power is. When we're talking about powerful corporations, powerful media businesses, powerful institutions, this is the issue. You can't get anything like, if you're fiddling around with all these little pipsqueaks quarreling about stuff down there. The real issue is who gets to decide on the geopolitical or national political level the kind of lives that we are going to live, the kind of resources we're going to have access to and not have access to, and are those systems in themselves not moribund, broken, corrupt, ridiculous in my opinion, in your country and mine. When I hear you criticize power, I agree with you. Sometimes when I hear you criticize what in my view are people that are less powerful, this is where I find myself not in alignment with your perspective. I say this with respect.